I will speak in English, but I will keep it very simple for you, okay? I have been very lucky. I've spent the last 10 years living in 5 different countries. One of those countries was Japan. And when I was in Japan, I met Makoto. Makoto and I became great friends. And I learned a lot from Makoto. He wasn't a teacher, and he wasn't a trainer. He was a salesman. And I didn't learn about sales. I learned about culture. I learned a lot from Makoto. And I remember one day I was in Makoto's house, and he was busy with his wife, and I was watching his granddaughter. She was 4 years old, and she was on the floor. She was drawing a picture. And it was like any other picture you might see around the world. In the middle, she had drawn a line, and underneath the line, in green, she had made the grass, and there were trees, and in the middle, there was a house with a little path, and in the sky, she had drawn little birds. But there was one thing that was different about her picture, one thing that was different to me. In the top left-hand corner, she had drawn a red circle, and she had colored it in red, and around it, she had drawn these little red lines. And I checked the floor, and she had lots of pencils. She had maybe 50 pencils, and she had yellow pencils and orange pencils, but she had chosen the red pencil to make the sun. And later that evening, when I was out eating with Makoto, I asked him, "Why did your daughter draw the sun in red?" And he looked at me like I was mad. He said, "John, in Japan, the sun is red." But of course it is, because look at the Japanese flag. So look at the Japanese flag. This is the sun. This is a reference to the sun. And in Japan, the sun is red. But in other countries, the sun is different colors. The Aztecs were a group of people who lived in central Mexico. They don't exist anymore. But when they lived, for them, the sun was orange. And for the Inuit people, maybe you know them as Eskimo, for them, the sun is white. And of course, for Westerners, Hungarians, what color is the sun? Yellow, of course. Now try telling that to Makoto's 4-year-old granddaughter. I don't think she would believe you. And I'm sure she still thinks the sun is red. Okay, have a look at this picture. Maybe you can see the young woman. Can you see anything else? And the cat. I'm going to tell you another story. This is not my story. This is an old Indian story, and it's about 6 blind men. They meet an elephant for the first time. They didn't know anything about an elephant. And each man touches just one part of the elephant. The first man touches the elephant's trunk, and he thinks the elephant is like a snake. The second man touches the elephant's tusk, and he thinks the elephant is like a spear. The third, on touching the elephant's ear, thinks it's like a fan. The fourth thinks the elephant is like a tree. The fifth thinks the huge side is a wall, and the sixth thinks the elephant is like a rope. The 6 men go back to their village, and they all have followers. So in their 6 groups, they tell their followers about the elephant. The first man tells his followers the elephant is like a snake. The second man tells his followers the elephant is like a spear, and so on. So the followers come together and they start to discuss and debate and argue and fight until finally the whole village is fighting. The whole village except for one man. There was a 7th blind man, and this man was a little bit older, a little bit wiser than the others. And he went to the elephant after the 6, and he took his time to feel it, to touch it, to move around it, to smell it, to feed it, to listen to it, to understand it. And he came away with a much better understanding of the elephant. And as he went back to the village, he saw all the fighting and all the uproar. And he realized he knew more than everyone else, but he also realized, because he was so open-minded, that he needed to learn more about the elephant, because he was the only one who was not convinced what the elephant was like. Now, we can learn a lot from the story of the 6 blind men. First of all, their understanding of each part of the elephant was correct, but none of them understood what an elephant was really like. How could they get a clearer picture of the elephant? How could they get a better understanding, a more accurate picture? They could have talked to each other. They could have shared their knowledge. They maybe should have gone back to the elephant and did what the old man did and feel around it and try to understand it more. Or they could even have asked the old man to teach them. So the story of the blind men and the elephant illustrates 2 things. The first thing is that culture is really complex. There are many different parts to culture. Sometimes we just think about maybe national culture, country culture, or individual culture, but there are many, many different parts, just like the elephant. And the second thing is that our frame of reference affects how we see things, how we evaluate, or how we think about things. Now I'm going to show you another quotation which explains frame of reference, what we mean about frame of reference. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. From a very young age, your culture builds inside you. There are many different factors that affect you and make your frame of reference. Every frame of reference is different. No individual is the same. And it means that you have a different outlook on life. And when you see things, you make judgments. And sometimes that's not a good thing. So where does our frame of reference come from? So these are like little subcultures. Like we said, it's complex. There are lots of different types of cultures, and these are some of them. So if you go to school with teachers, and the teachers are very close-minded, then maybe that could affect you. You might have a tendency to be quite closed as well. But maybe your parents are quite open-minded. Your parents were quite open-minded and flexible. And then maybe that is something that you have drawn upon also. So to conclude about the frame of reference, we evaluate according to our frame of reference, what is inside us. And we judge according to our subconscious assumptions. Subconscious assumptions are inside us, and we don't even realize, we don't know. They're at the back of our brain. And finally, if people or actions don't satisfy our assumptions, we form a negative impression. And this is dangerous. This is really dangerous because this is where stereotypes come from. You know some great stereotypes for Hungarians? You put paprika in every food. Great eaters, great drinkers, very hospitable. Some of the stereotypes are good. Okay, so some advice. You need to step out of your cultural frame of reference. You need to step out, and there are two ways that you can do this. Have a look at this quotation. This is from one of the top cultural gurus. I recommend reading some of Trompenaar's books. A fish only discovers its need for water when it is no longer in it. Our own culture is like water to a fish. It sustains us. We live and breathe through it. In other words, the fish doesn't even know it's in water. It only knows when you take it out. And it's the same with culture. You live and you breathe through culture. You can step out. The first way to do it is physically step out. Do what I did. Go and find Makoto. Go and find someone in a different country. Of course, it's not easy for everyone to move country. But remember, culture is complex. Culture is not just national culture or country culture. There are lots of different types of culture. You can step out of your industry. That's what I did. You can step out of your department in your company. You can step out of your company. Step out of your friendship. I don't recommend that. There are so many different subcultures that you can step out of. And when you step out, you learn about your own culture and you learn about other cultures as well. Okay, and the second one is really about learning. It's about educating yourself. So your world is not the only world. Listen to and try to understand others. Place yourself in someone else's shoes. Accept that nobody knows everything. Do not assume anything you don't understand. Recognize that life is a learning process. Continually seek knowledge and education. And the last one is ask yourself questions. Why do people do this? This is something I do a lot. They're great places to do it. We always have a lot of time to ourselves every day. If you go to the supermarket or the market, or you're driving your car, or you're walking, you can do this. You can ask. Last week, I was standing at traffic lights. This is one of my favorite places to ask myself questions. There were 5 people on the other side and 5 people on this side. And we were waiting, the red man. We're waiting, and nobody's walking, and it's a tiny road. It's very, very small. There's no traffic. And I'm thinking, maybe we should just go. But then I'm thinking, actually, the rules in Hungary are, this is something that is quite a big part of the culture, is the rules. And then one person walked, and I thought, yes, but sometimes we break the rules. And that's a big part of the culture also. And then another person walked, and another person, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to try and go. I went, and more people, and I thought, yeah, it's quite a collective culture, Hungary. Individual, but also collective. And I compared it with Japan and Korea, and I was thinking back, and I was thinking, people never did this. They keep to the rules, and even if it's a narrow road in the countryside, they won't walk. So ask yourself questions, and now I've got one question for you, just one question. I want you to have a look at this picture. Oh. I want you to have a look at this picture. What does it mean to you? What do you see? I'd like you to tell me what you see. Okay, so at the end of today, I'll be here, and I'd like to meet you, and I'd like to do some research. So please come and see me and tell me what you see. And I have a little information leaflet which I can give you, and it tells you about other countries and the people in the other countries and what they see. It's very, very different and unusual. There's one Hungarian on it, which is quite an interesting one. Maybe you can recognize it. Okay, that's me. I'm done. Thank you.